Okay guys, this is a quick tutorial of a demo I did in class, basically just showing how to use Illustrator to design and make assets for, in this case, kind of like an app screen or something like that, a dialogue screen. So it's quite different to your standard kind of dialogue things. It's got this kind of flat UI look to it in this particular instance, but obviously different screens will have different requirements. So this is one that I found. It's not my own work. I found it on Pinterest. But what was interesting about it from the point of view of the tutorial is some of the custom shapes, etc. There's elements of symmetry, but there are also a few anomalies which would have to be overcome. So I'm going to sort of take you through how you'd make this. Obviously someone's visualized it at different times of the day with different custom backgrounds, colors, etc. I think the app, judging by it, is a bit like a diary or kind of reminder app. So I've cut out the main kind of screen here, placed it on the second artboard. So I'm using Adobe Illustrator CS6 purely because I don't have the Creative Cloud on this machine. But obviously in class we've been doing it in CS6, pretty much identical functionality for what we're doing here. We're going to be using sort of some of these tools for drawing. We're also going to be using kind of the Pathfinder features and the align tools, etc. So the first phase was taking this image and just looking at how we might play around with it. So I have a cutout version of just the key bit in the center. And then I just had to go, sometimes with certain things this will work extremely well. But what I've done is I've duplicated and then I've used the live trace. So when you have an image like this one, which is embedded, as you can see up here into the document, you can then hit image trace and Illustrator will try and trace it into shapes. So you can see here a sort of default one with the standard colors where it's tried to limit the number of colors. And I just wanted to see if it would do a decent job of tracing these shapes. As you can see, it's kind of rounded them off, smoothed them off a bit, and some of it's fallen apart. Now you can customize all these settings. Here I've got a black and white version of the screen. Again, duplicate the copy. You can come up and play around with image tracing. You can try out different presets. For example, you can go for line art or black and white line drawing. Now these things will work very differently on different kinds of screens. You've got your different types of images. You've got your threshold setting. You've got a load of advanced settings in here. So if I went for just a few colors, let's go for shades of gray actually. In this case, you can see it's going to turn it into a kind of grayscale image. You can see the banding here where it's trying to deal with a gradient. If this didn't have any gradient elements, it'd probably do a much better job of it. You can also lower the number of colors, so we can take it right down to fewer, and it's just going to update in the background each time I knock this down. So if I jump down to 6, let's see how that does. You can see it's kind of trying to turn them into 6 grayscale images. Doing quite a good job, but some of these things, as I say, are being smooth now. Again, you can go in and fiddle with how sharp or accurate things like corners are. So you can see when I move corners up, these suddenly become much sharper. But they still, I'm not completely convinced that they're sharp. So you could try that. Sometimes Illustrator can do your hard work for you. I'm not going to use that, so I'm just going to close that, hit undo a few times, turn it back to what it was. I'm going to scroll across to the side here. So it's just working on that. And I tried the same thing with the original image, and we tried line drawing. Sometimes, again, this can create nice shapes for you. But again, you know, being a bit of a perfectionist and given how sharp the original is, I decided that that wasn't really the best way to proceed. So normally what I would do is I'd place my image, as I've done here, in the background, and then with it selected, you go up to Object and you hit Lock, which just prevents me accidentally moving the image all the time. So you can see I can't move the image at all. And then I've started working over the top of that. And I'm just going to zoom in a tiny bit here. And you can see I've started laying things out now. Default on my computer, I don't have the right fonts here. So you can see that these don't look right. I've just put in the text for now. I think I've got this bit slightly the wrong way around. But I've basically blocked out some of the kind of text, putting it into places and kind of trying to work out. You can see I haven't got the tabs working. Then I've also used the pen tool. to create these lines. Now, the important thing is what I've done here to create this line over here. I haven't drawn, a lot of people make the mistake of using the line tool in Illustrator and drawing separate lines, which on the surface would look the same. But what I'm going to do in a minute is you get Illustrator to take this single line that comes across here and take the rectangle that is the screen area and basically divide them so that where this cuts across the shape, the rectangle in the background, we will get a separate area here for the page with the tab and a separate area for what is effectively the top half, which can then be put into the background and painted orange, etc. So I've started laying out basic shapes. You can also hopefully see my logic here. I've used basic symbols. If I double click, these are all grouped at the moment. So double clicking on a group up the top here, you'll see I've moved from the layer into the group, and then I can select the individual elements. So here I've just used two rectangles and I've put them side by side, just copied it and rotated it, stuck it against it. Okay. And the idea is this is obviously going to be my tick, so it just needs to be rotated and put into place. Okay. And then again, I'm going to use Pathfinder in a minute to just join these. Just going back through the steps to return it. I've drawn the beginning basics for this calendar icon. Obviously, what I'd need to add to this now is I'd need to add an inner rectangle here for the inside area of the calendar. And I've drawn a round cornered rectangle at the top. If you're using Creative Cloud, some of these elements might have little extra handles which control rounding corners. Obviously, with what I'm doing here, it's pretty sharp, so I'm not using that at all. Just need another version of that for the top of the calendar. Now, I like to be quite organized with my work and let the computer do a lot of my hard work for me. So you can see this is not currently in the group as a whole. So I'm going to cut it. I drew it on top, but I drew it in a separate piece. And I'm going to double click to enter the group. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to group these elements. I'm going to right click. Why my right click is not working. Okay, and I'm going to group. Must be something wrong with my Bluetooth mouse here. Then I'm going to double click again and I've gone into that group. So this is calendar icon. I could name these groups. So you see I'm in the first group, which is obviously the whole screen. In the second group now, which is the calendar icon. If you remember, I cut out that inside shape. So I can now go to edit and paste in place. Okay, or paste in front. Either of these will basically pop that item back in the same place. Now the reason I like all these things to be in groups within groups is now what I can do is, for example, with these two elements, I can right click those and group those. And now with all these elements here, I should be able to align them and let Illustrator do the hard work. So I don't find I've got 3 or 4 pixels on this side and 4 or 5 on that. So I just come up to the top here, hit horizontal align center, and I know that these elements are now centered on the whole calendar icon, assuming that's what I'm after. Okay, because I've used centered type, again, that should be centered in here. And even if it's a smaller number like a 1 or a 3, or if it's a wide number like an 88, it would fit in there easily and be centered all the time. So when I'm happy with these things, I'm pretty much ready to go to the next phase. You can see I've also put in rectangles for the checkboxes. I would duplicate this tick once I've got it going. I've put in my basic type, and what I'm going to do is just take you through some of that process. Now the screen area that we're working for here is quite low resolution by modern standards, but I've stuck to it. So it's 320 by 480. Okay, I know that by measuring the background image. If you go in to the object and double click, I want to check that this box is the right size. So I can use the transform feature and you can see 320 by 480. Now you can deselect this if they're out and adjust. This makes the two proportions constrained, but it's really important with screen elements in particular to work accurately. Okay, so when I created this document, because I knew it was for screen, I used RGB color mode, and I also used pixels. If you find you have got different settings, my mouse seems to be coming and going. For example, if I click with rectangle tool, if it's not coming up with pixels, Then what you want to do is go to View, Rulers, and you want Show Rulers normally. Now obviously I've got them visible already. Go up to your ruler and right click on it. You can switch what the default setting is. So if you've got centimeters, inches is quite common because very popular in the States, and sometimes by default Illustrator will be installed with US kind of defaults. So I've changed it to pixels, and then I'm making sure that many of the elements are the right size. I don't want to find at the end that I've got half a pixel too many. Illustrator is extremely powerful, and it can create, fractions to several decimal places, or even of a small unit like a pixel. So you can see I've clearly made sure with this object in the background, I've messed it up now, it should be 320 by 480. Okay, be careful, obviously resized it by accident. So I'm pretty much ready to do the next phase. Now, what I'm going to do in the next video, I'm just going to pause this video and I'm going to show you that process. If you're happy in producing these things using the basic pen tool, drawing basic shapes, putting text in, understanding, you can see my text here is not within an outside box. Sorry, these are because they fit inside a column, but this one I've just clicked to place the text on. So if you're not comfortable with text, with basic control in Illustrator, then watch the next video. If you are happy with that, you can probably skip on a few and come back to the point where we start slicing and dicing. Okay, so see you in the next video.